It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Hey, it's the SDG Podcast. We're here with our podcasters. Say hello and introduce yourselves.
I'm Peter Lawrence.
Hey, I'm Chad Chetner.
And I'm Kyle Locker. And Kyle Locker.
We might need to do that again.
And we have the extra special guest, Claire Patera, joining us today. So today we're going to talk about expectations. Movies for me, like the amount I enjoy them, is pretty much based on my expectations going into it. So movies that people say are horrible and they didn't like there was a Fantastic Four movie.
Loved it.
Most recent one that came out that
may not have seen
people
it.
said was one of the worst movies ever made. So I had heard all that, and then I watched it one day. And I was like, "Oh, this isn't that bad. I kind of enjoyed it. This isn't horrible, even though it might be." But and then as something gets built up, like this is the greatest thing ever, and I watch it, I'm like, it's not that good. Get over it.
I agree. I go into all movies with zero expectations except to be entertained.
I try that. Doesn't work for me.
Super easy.
Chad, did you have high expectations going into Moon Knight?
No. He's like a C-list character, so I expected nothing, and I was delighted. And if movies and entertainment, you keep your expectations low, and there's very little chance that you're going to be disappointed.
So
I thought Moon Knight was terrific. I thought Ms. Marvel, which I did not expect to be good, I thought that was awesome.
I really enjoyed that episode. I wish they had put out 2 of them like they did with some of the other ones.
If you wait a couple weeks, they will, because they'll catch up to you.
Thanks. That's how once a week works. Like if you wait another week, there's another episode.
Then they have
That's
2.
so hard now.
So setting expectations.
That is the consultant's life.
Yeah. So as consultants, as workers, co-workers, let me ask you this. How good were you at setting expectations when you started doing it versus how you are now? And what lessons did you learn along the way? And you can only answer with a single word. No, I'm kidding.
I will say this. Never give your boss an estimate in a drive-by.
What?
Never give your boss an estimate in sort of a walk by. Hey, how long do you think that's going to take you?
Okay.
Never. Say,
I should probably get that out to you tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. 2 weeks later. It's like, no, it's not done yet. Something came up. Over-promising. I was a big over.
I don't know that I've gotten any. I don't know. I don't know that I've improved much. I mean, I'm best when I'm on a team, and I think setting expectations as a team is kind of an activity that we do early on. When we're forming the team. I don't know. I think I've been incredibly lucky. I've been put on like really, really, really great teams, and so far, I mean, project work has gone well early, and that kind of hurts a little bit later on in the project because if the expectation that you set, I mean, if you deliver early and you deliver quality and everything else, I mean, you set the bar in your first few months. And not that anybody ever really wants to sandbag, but your customer now has this standard up here that is potentially, like, I think you come into a project and you want to be great, you want to impress, you want to do great work, and then you do that great work, and now that is your baseline.
That's the bar, exactly. So does that ever come back to bite you guys?
I've had a product owner use the phrase, "You guys are victims of your own success," frequently, and I don't want to say that it's come back to bite me. I think I've been super fortunate to work with reasonable folks that understand, highs and lows. So, I mean, setting expectations, it's super, super nebulous, but when it comes to project work, I think you try your best for a while. You don't necessarily slack off, but like
Well,
there's a lot of energy invested
well,
up
you
front.
created an expectation, even though it wasn't explicit. I mean, by doing that, going and doing great work. So do you then find yourself having to reset expectations? And how do you go about doing that?
That hasn't
That hasn't
been a thing yet. I mean, it is a little bit like as new people come onto a project or onto a team, or you have to revisit expectations once in a while,
Sure.
right? Like this is our level, this is our bar, this is kind of I don't know that I've ever had to really adjust one way or the other too much.
Okay.
I've
I don't
had
know. What about you, Peter?
I've had product owners in the past that have lived and died by the burn down chart, and some sprints based on estimates that are made up numbers, you do amazingly well, and you get a lot of those made up numbers completed. And then other times you go through and you didn't, just had an experience where a 5-point project became a 3-week task for someone, right? There was never an expectation that it was going to take 3 weeks because it wouldn't have fit in a 2-week sprint. But here we are at the end of 3 weeks and finally done. So if you live and die by the burn down chart, that looks horrible. Like you got 5 points done in one sprint. Wow. Time to look for a new developer and trade up.
Yeah.
But that's somebody without experience. And as you get more experienced product owners and people that you can have conversations with, it goes so much better. It's like, yes, if you're going to track those made up numbers by made up developers, you are going to get a lot of fluctuation, maybe more than you're expecting. They're kind of a wide swath of how much work you're going to get done. And as you get more in the project, you're going to get better at estimating. But even so, there's still some zingers that go way above and beyond what you thought due to conditions that you just weren't expecting or anything else. So many factors.
When I started out, I was really bad at like time frame, like time quotes. How long this will take. I no idea. So you're writing up these statements of work when you got to put in numbers, and it's like, I should know all this because we did talk for 60 minutes one time, and I should be able to fill all this out and know how everything's going to go. And I wasn't intentional enough on certain things, and yeah, it would bite me. It would come back to haunt me. The expectation's too high. You get in people pleaser mode, and so you're more likely to give out like dates that you can't hit. You don't want to, if I say it's going to take me 2 weeks, they're going to be upset. So I'll say it'll be done in 2 days, and then just try to get it done in 2 days, and then have to go back with my hat in my hand with the apologies written. But I've gotten better at that. I do more work around breaking everything down to the task level, and then figuring out, okay, almost doing the work in my head to figure out what it's going to take. I'm about to sneeze.
Gesundheit.
How does that play into expectations? I don't know. Oh my goodness.
He sneezed so hard he blew out his camera.
Welcome back, Kyle. Oh, there you go. All right.
I'm back.
Yeah, and and certainly as young gun programmers, we'll call it, you tend to get in like, I'm going to work on this 10 hours today because I got nothing else to do. So I'm just going to focus on this. I have no meetings. I have nothing. And look at how much work I got done. So compared to the senior guy who's off in 8 hours of meetings all day, he got nothing done except attend 8 hours of meetings. So I've certainly been in that mode too, where you do go off and just code out of your mind as fast as you can.
Yeah. You set expectations a lot of times just through your actions, your track record. I was, when I had a full-time tech job at a different company back at the turn of the century, we were in a growth phase, and the users, we were adding users like every week. And so the workload on the tech support side got pretty high to the point I was working 50, 60-hour weeks. And I'm seeing other people in IT working their 40 or their 36 with their 2-hour lunches or whatever, coming in at 9, leaving at 4. And I wasn't getting any more accolades or pats on the back. What I was doing is giving my company the wrong idea about what it took to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
well, he's getting all his work done. Yeah, but he worked 7 days this week and put in like 70 hours because of all these computer moves and new people. And yeah, so you got to be careful that you're not setting unreasonable expectations just by doing more than you should,
But
if that's
well,
possible.
I feel like that's the same thing Chad was talking about. And no one is setting that expectation. You're creating that expectation.
Yes, and you're not setting it. You're
No
creating it.
one looked at you and said, Kyle, I need you to work 70 hours or 7 days this week and
Right.
8 hours a day. You need to do 56, 60 hours this week. No one said that to you. You did that in order to meet your own expectations because you wanted to get that work done and you wanted to be a high performer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying that I should have slacked and phoned it in, but I wasn't doing anybody any favors really, except because it's straight salary. I'm not getting paid for the extra time. So yeah, the company's benefiting, but are they benefiting if they burn out their tech guy? And like, there's a long game you got to play, that it wouldn't have paid off in the long run versus having
Right.
2 people in that role.
Well, it certainly wasn't sustainable.
No, but there's expectations that you set through your actions. Then there's stuff where you make promises. A promise is a prison that you would lock yourself in. When they don't ask, like, no one asked you to throw a deadline out there, like they said, how's it going? And you're like, great, it's going pretty well. We're making really good progress. No, how's it going? It's great. We'll be finished in the next 20 minutes.
I mean, that is a fantastic point. That's something that you learn over time to never do is don't offer your own deadline without being asked for it, right? Don't,
Right.
like, somebody's going to ask you how long it's going to take. Obviously, they don't want to just, this will take infinite amount of time and we'll let it go until it gets done. But if they just offer, have you do a task and don't ask for don't give you a deadline, don't tell you when they need it by, it's not really important, do this whenever you can. Well, those are like, okay, I will ignore this until you tell me it's important because I have a whole other workload that keeps me busy.
Go ahead, Chad.
I was going to say, I mean, if you're building a product for somebody, I mean, obviously, like Peter said, they're going to want to know, hey, when can we expect said product?
Right.
I think like it's super, super important for me to be like, to Kyle's point, like, don't overpromise, right? Yes, you jump on a product team, you deliver kind of a lot early and you set the expectation that you're competent, that you're um, even more than the competency test, it's the honesty test. Like, hey, if I tell you, this is what we can deliver in this period of time, trust that I'm not sandbagging, right? Like that's huge. And two, like we're not like nobody's going to be working 70-hour weeks, 7 days a week like Kyle did to deliver this thing on a ridiculous timeline. That's just not sustainable and it's not healthy. So like one of the expectations that I try to shoot for early on is like trust that all of my time, all of my estimates, all of what I'm doing, it's based on fact, it's based on reality, and it's like as honest as I think it can be at a given time. So it's not padded, it's not, I'm not downplaying how hard something is, but I'm also not padding it with extra, to give myself extra time. I'm saying, hey, this is like Peter said, this is a 5-point story. This is a 5-point story, right? I'm not going to say it's 8 or 13 or whatever, just so that it makes us look better when we deliver sooner. No, it's an honest approximation of what we think we can deliver given given a set amount of time.
So I have a question for you, Chad. Like, especially with projects that are sort of greenfield, right, where you're starting from nothing.
Mhm.
And oftentimes with those projects, some of the simpler things get done first, right? Because
Oh yeah.
we know more about it. And then people like, wow, they really got that thing that I thought was going to be really hard because I don't understand programming and development. And they got it done so fast. That means the rest of this project is going to get done so much faster. And you're like, no, it's not. We did the easy stuff first.
Yeah. And I've had a couple of things like that, right? Where you start out and you build the building blocks, right? Like I compare it to Legos, right? You build out the simple little building blocks that are going to comprise the rest of the product that you're building. That's not the hard part. The hard part is taking those things and associating them in weird ways and integrating with somebody else's Lego set and all of this other things. Like I always use Legos as kind of a common frame of reference for non-technical people to understand what we're doing and how we're doing it. And that's a great expectation to set, is that the easy stuff is going to fly by fast. The harder concepts, the complexity, like the secret sauce, that's going to be the hard stuff. Like that's going to be the velocity you see early on isn't the same velocity that you get a year later into a product.
Right.
Yeah.
I do less complicated stuff than Chad. So I use Duplo blocks for my examples.
They'll fit
Me
together.
too, Kyle.
I'm not quite at the same level, so I'm down here with so there's expectations you set, there's expectations others set for you, which is my nightmare. When somebody else wrote up the quote, the deliverables, and landed the gig, and then sent me in to do it. I'm like, oh, so I have to, and then give me a fixed bid. Like, okay, now I've got 3 months to do what you told them I was going to do. So you're writing checks that I have to cash.
Yeah,
Great.
I've been on all three sides of that. One where I had to come up with the estimate, one where I had to do somebody else's estimate, and one where I've had to do both. And I wouldn't say that any one of them works out infinitely better than the others. There's still a bit of estimation magic that takes place, and hopefully you hit it right, but
Yeah.
still human.
Well, the first part of any engagement, any project is just kind of getting your legs under you and figuring out like, what is the work? Like, what are we actually going to be doing? I know we talked about stuff, but when the rubber hits the road, you kind of map out all the tasks and go, this is the body of work. These are the deliverables. So this is stuff we have to do. This is our time frame. These are the number of people we have. You're kind of resourcing everything out. And, that's happening after you've done the estimate, the first one. And then it's kind of, okay, this is the batch. This is the work now. We understand more. Can we still do it all? Can we still hit the time frame? You have to kind of have some moment of a reality check to reset expectations, and then communicating as you go so that people have a sense of that things are moving forward. And imaginations are the worst. And if you're not communicating with people, then they're imagining what's happening. The projects I've led, I'm communicating with the project sponsor like all the time. If there's any kind of change, any kind of thing pops up, I want to make sure that's constantly being communicated. And then that kind of covers the expectation thing. Just having that conversation and getting caught up and knowing where things are at, like that kind of meets the expectation. It might not meet it perfectly, but it does satisfy something that lets you move forward.
Claire, you're awful quiet.
I know I am.
She's just marveling.
I'm taking it all in. I want to make sure I don't have anything I don't think to add to that. I've got my brain is going around a bunch of different topics around expectations. I mean, I'm a classic overpromiser. I literally had lunch with a couple of colleagues yesterday that talked about optimist Claire and then the reality and the two little voices that sit on my shoulders. Because I have, and Kyle's shaking his head, he was on my staff for years, he knows. What I think I've learned, so to go back to Kyle's kind of original question, what I think I've learned is to at least ask people. So Peter, you made a comment about this, but I tend to ask people when they want something. So if they come to me and they're asking for something, and even if they say, when can you get it done? I even if they don't, I might say, when do you need this? Because that helps me then prioritize and shuffle things if I need to, or look at them and say, I'm sorry, I can't get it done that soon. So not always great about it, but it helps me a little bit I think I'm getting a little bit better at not always overpromising.
You're learning their expectations.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actively seeking them because otherwise that's, the other thing is unspoken expectations. Like people do that I do that all the time. People do that all the time. And one of the best examples, and I'm going to kind of pick on my husband a little bit. Sorry, Dave, if you're listening. He used to look at the kids when they were little, our two kids, and say, clean your room. And they would literally go sit in their room and just kind of sit and look around. And I would look at Dave and I'd say, you need to be a little more explicit than that. They don't know what that means. I mean, they were 5 and 3 or 6 and 4, right? Like clean your room can mean a whole host of their definition of a clean room may not be the same as yours. You have an expectation when you're telling them to clean their room, but they don't know what that expectation is because you're not being explicit about it.
Why are you not polishing your Legos right now? They should be clean and shiny.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. So Claire, you brought up a good point, and it's something that I think all of us in business and everywhere have faced. Like, what if you get asked to deliver something that you can't, right, in the time frame that they want? That's the best conversation to have up front when somebody tells you when they want something, and you're like, that's never going to happen. But how many times have you said inside your head, that's never going to happen, but I'm sure going to try?
Which doesn't help anyone.
No.
Yeah, and then you
everybody
end
has
up
their expectation.
Then you end up jettisoning anything you can. Well, yeah, we're doing okay, but we're not going to be able to do this thing, and we're not going to be able to do that thing. And you sort of start bailing on some of those deliverables just to meet that timeline.
Right.
That's kind of what happens.
That goes back to setting the honesty part of it, right? Like once you guys understand, what our cadence is, what our velocity is, and once you trust us when we say, hey, this is what we can accomplish in this period of time, hopefully, Peter, that conversation doesn't have to be a hard one. It is, listen, you want this screen, completely integrated with all these other systems, completely built, completely tested, all of this stuff. here's how long it's taken in the past. Here's how long we anticipate this to take. And when we say that's a 6-week project, you know, we've said 6 weeks before, and it's been, you know, between 5 and 7. So yeah. I
So
go
don't
through
ask
that.
for it in 4.
Yeah, I go through that just a ton on almost every product, right? Like, and it's more of a problem with folks that come in, you know, later, right? Like, you don't have the expectation that your estimates are usually pretty damn good. You don't have the expectation of what the team's able to deliver in a given period of time. It just that level of trust and communication just doesn't exist yet. So once it does, hopefully you don't have to. Nobody's going to ask for a 6-week project in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Because they're expecting you to be able to tell them how long something's going to take. Because you have that trust.
Right.
Yeah. I had
Let's not argue.
a lot of work done on my lawn. My lawn guy came to mow, and I walked around with him, and he said, "Do you want me to take care of that?" Yeah. How about that? Yeah. Yeah. Do that. Yeah. So I signed up for a lot of extra things, and realized after he had been here for 2.5 days that it might have been a good idea to get the price up front. So that's where, like, I hadn't had the expectation set. Like, it was up in the air. Like, so what am I, I can't really have an expectation because I don't know how long any of this takes. I don't know how much any of this should cost. But I like the guy. He did great with my, snow removal stuff, and he seemed really reasonable. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to worry about it. I had a number in my head. I'm like, okay, because I was talking to my buddy. I'm like, okay, if it's over X, I might start asking questions. I said, but if it's under that, I'm going to pay it with a smile on my face.
Maybe
And
as a
then
volume
next
discount.
time I'm going to get some ideas up front.
Maybe as a volume discount, Kyle.
Yes.
The more you ask him to do.
So how did
Yeah.
it turn out, Kyle? Did it work out?
I think I'm going to tip him like $100 because he did a phenomenal job,
It
and
came in
the price
underestimate.
was well lower than I thought it was going to be.
Oh,
Nice.
see, he exceeded your
Yes,
expectations.
He did. But he had built up some trust with
Right.
me, like Chad was saying. So I was okay with, like, I didn't run out and stop him and go, oh, wait, how much is this going to cost me? I was just like, I think it'll work out. I think it's fine. He's a good guy,
And he wasn't
did
just
like
walking down the
twice as
street.
much as I thought he was going to do. He did extra stuff that was all great. Like, do that. Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, and I extended the wee bed around the house. I put new edging down. I'm like, okay, I just asked you to trim the edge, but that's way better. Yeah, he did such a good job that it's like I'm, writing him a check is going to be a act of joy. Like, I'm going to be happy to pay him for the work he did. But that's expectations. Like, I didn't set them, but again, I built trust. So I actually had expectations that it was going to be fine. Claire, when she was my boss, learned that I expected a response from her within 5 seconds. Yeah.
Pretty
No
accurate.
matter what.
Pretty accurate.
And even the response of I can't respond yet is a good response.
Well, so I've adjusted to not meeting other people's expectations. I've put some things in place, like the deadline thing is one, right? Like if I consistently missed what their expected deadline was, now I'm asking for it, right? The other thing I've even done in the past is if I've got someone when I was a consultant manager at SDG, I had someone on my team that would reach out frequently, and it wasn't you, Kyle, it was someone else. but it was someone who would reach out pretty frequently. And like I would get a few emails a day from this particular individual. And
day?
well, yeah, I mean, not every day, but on the days
Wow.
that there's a lot going on, I would get multiples. And it was ideas. I mean, it was a whole host of things. And when I didn't reply in the amount of time that he expected me to, we had a conversation and I finally just said, listen, if it's something you need me to respond to quickly, put urgent or something in the subject line so I know that that's the email I'm going to go to first. So I essentially asked him to help me prioritize that. But again, he had this expectation, and the way I attempted to start meeting the expectation was to help reset his a little bit, right? Like, I'm not going to give you a response in 5 seconds every time, or even in 5 minutes. So if it's something important, you need to highlight that for me.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like they were putting their own expectations on you without even waiting or asking or anything or even telling you anything about it. It was, an email. Well, an email, how long can I let that sit? I can let that sit a long time. They'll text me if it's really urgent or they'll Slack me if it's really urgent, but an email, bah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
emails, I don't have the same expectations I used to for a response. And Slack is, the expectation I have is when I Slack somebody, they're going to get back to me at some point, but I don't have I'm not sitting there watching.
Yeah.
But if you start typing right away, I can see that you're typing and then you stop typing and then nothing happens after that.
I just put a space in there and walk away, go get some coffee.
Yeah.
Keep Kyle sitting there watching it.
I'm like, are we doing this thing or
I
what?
think I've done that to him before. No, I'm kidding.
Well, there's
whoever
some things
invented whoever invented the read receipt, that guy is, I hate that guy, right?
I don't
Because
like
my wife
so-and-so is
noted-
typing.
Whenever
Yeah.
whenever that thing pops up, I'm like, nope, don't send one.
Yeah. I swear to God, like my wife knows when I turn them off, right? So yeah, I hate it. So now I have to to put my phone down, not touch it, not look at it. It'll be buzz. Maybe somebody I do want to hear from will be texting me. Not that I don't always want to hear from my wife, but I hate the read receipts. That has set up an unreasonable expectation for
Agreed,
everybody.
because
that
people
you're
I
gonna-
never have accepted a read receipt.
No, I agree.
Ever.
That does set an unreasonable expectation, because just because you had the ability to glance at your phone and read the message quickly doesn't mean you're in a spot where you can answer it immediately.
I think it's
And it's-
condescending. It's like,
and it's
I don't trust you to read my emails. So I need to
Well,
be
I'm talking
treated.
about text messages,
Yeah.
right? So when I send a text, somebody can say, "Hey, this guy read it," or you can turn off that functionality by person or by whatever.
So that's the iPhone problem, right?
Oh,
With the iPhone, the blue text, they can tell that you've read it. They can see all of those things, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's
If you
super cool.
engage though if you engage in a conversation over text, you need to treat it like a normal conversation, and you wouldn't just stop talking and walk away abruptly in the middle of it, leaving that person hanging.
Well,
So you
sometimes the
need
stoplight
to
goes from red to
close the
green.
loop. You got to close the loop. Hey, I got to run. You have to close the loop. You can't just all of a sudden you answer that last question 6 hours later. Oh, sorry, I got distracted. It's like,
But what Chad's
Sorry, I
talking
got
about
pulled
is
over for texting and driving.
but yeah, I know I agree with you, Chad. That part is
It makes things challenging and makes the expectation that just because you've glanced at it does not mean that you've read it, digested it, thought about it, and are preparing a response. It's just that you may have inadvertently tapped on that person's name.
Yep.
And then tapped on the next one because that's who you really wanted to read.
yeah.
But it does actually speak to another expectation that we set with clients, right? Like, how connected are you if you're on a thing, right? And I've I've set a poor example for the rest of the team because I usually respond to everything and I have too many phone numbers in my thing. So I will be, if they don't see me on Teams, they don't see me on Slack, they can text, I'll get a text, and I unreasonably respond to texts from clients quite a bit off hours. I probably shouldn't, but they know, okay, the expectation, I mean, I've got multiple people on a team and I am reachable when somebody else isn't. And that's, that was level set early on.
But what's your role on the team, Chad? Aren't you the team lead?
I am one of the team leads, yes.
Yeah, well, so I think that's a different expectation versus, one of your teammate for a developer versus the team lead. You don't think so, Peter?
After hours, no. That's way
I'm
too
not saying it's
connected.
a good expectation. I'm just saying that his response time, and even just barely outside of working hours, or just during working hours, should be more immediate than like a developer or someone else. So I guess I wasn't thinking necessarily of after hours and stuff, but you're right
Well,
about that.
But do you want to be an escalation point for everything? Like,
Right.
oh, Kyle didn't get back to me in 5 minutes, so I'm going to call Chad and see if he can get a hold of Kyle and make Kyle answer my question for me. Like, no,
Right.
Kyle's busy or he would have answered you. I'm pretty sure.
He's eating dinner with his family, leave him alone.
Well, and that especially. And Chad, I'm as guilty as you are because I like to be able to give a quick response to a quick question. If it's at 7 o'clock and I'm just sitting around watching TV or watching the grass grow, it's okay. I'm going to just text it. But yeah, it's a horrible precedent. But I've never regretted it. I really don't.
Yeah. I've never regretted it. And it's one of those things that once you dip your toe in, like you can't back out of that, right? Like the minute you answer an 8:30 text or a 10 p.m. text, that is the bar.
Well,
I'm sorry, Kyle, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that, I set hours. I don't tell people what those set hours are. I just work within those hours. So if it's 5:30, you're probably not going to get a response. The only things I respond to before or after hours are phone calls. To me, that's the emergency hotline.
sure.
So if somebody
I'm gonna
picks
write
up
that
the
down.
phone, that's a different story. But if I get a Slack message, an email, or a text, I might take a peek at it because I have this involuntary reflex of opening my email and my Slack. Like I just realized it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm looking at my Slack and my email. Like, what am I doing? I wasn't going to do that. But then I'll see something, and if it's an emergency type situation or something I can tell that somebody's stressing out about, I might get back to them.
Yeah.
If it's an easy answer, but I will try to avoid getting in a conversation with them. But I'm not on call.
Right.
So
And
there are times of the day where you probably won't get a hold of me.
And to your point, Chad, I don't think that the person that's texting at 10 o'clock at night should have the expectation that just by sending this text, I will get Chad to respond. It's more of I'm going to throw this out there. Chad might respond right now. He might respond tomorrow morning, but I'm going to take the chance that maybe he'll respond right now.
Yeah. But more often than not, that probably is their expectation, is they don't expect an immediate answer. But, sometimes I'll throw something out there that I don't expect anybody to even look at until the next day. But if I don't do it in the moment when I'm thinking about it, it's likely I might forget about it.
I have an expectation that people will show up to meetings within the first 5 minutes. In the first 5 minutes, it's fine. Like if it's 4:05, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. People get busy, they forget, they go over. It just happens. I'm not going to worry about that 5 minutes. The 15-minute mark is where I hang up or I reach out and say, are we doing this? Yeah.
I'm a little busy. You got 3 minutes. And if I'm on a thing by myself for 3 minutes, I hang up. Especially if it's a one-on-one or something like that. But yes, I'm not patient when it comes to people.
Do you
especially
send
virtually.
do you send a message like, "Hey, text me when you got time. I see that you haven't shown up to our meeting."
This is Minnesota, Peter. We're much more passive aggressive than
I
that.
had a great Slack conversation with Chad one day. He is not a
Yeah.
patient guy. We were slacking and it took me, how long, Chad? Like 45 minutes or something. It was a while. And he's like, really, Claire? Like he slacks me again. And he literally says, really, Claire? Like you just drop the whole conversation. Cause to Kyle's point, I didn't do the, hey, gotta go, whatever. I was just really busy with meetings that morning and I felt so bad. But Chad called me out. I mean,
Yeah.
it was very clear to me what his expectation was at that point.
I knew she felt bad, and I knew that I could probably double down on
Well,
that bad feelings, and I did.
Yeah. Isn't that what passive aggressiveness is all about?
That's right.
Is making other people feel
Double
bad.
down and get the response, right?
Right. I will say though that like I said, I'm one of the tech leads, my co-tech lead on the project. He's been very good about setting expectations. Like if I text him off hours about anything other than the twins, a happy hour, or jumping in to play Call of Duty for a little bit, he does not respond. But if it's one of those other things, he will respond immediately. Like, yes, absolutely. Let me drop everything I'm doing and we will play video games together or whatever else. So he's actually done a fantastic job of level setting, what he'll respond to. I respond to almost everything, almost at any hour. Bad of me, but yeah.
And regardless, he's reading the text. He's just not responding if it's not one of those 3 cool topics, and
Oh,
he'll
yeah, like, I
respond
know-
later, right?
I know for a fact. I mean, he's got an Android, so I don't know that he's read it, but I know that he sees it. Like I sit next to him, and I know how he is with his phone. Like if it buzzes, he flips it open, and I will see like during work hours. Like I'll see if it's like somebody he doesn't want to hear about. He'll close it. Right, that person does not get a response.
You're on my long list.
So we're coming down to the final stretch. I wanted to talk about the expectations you set for yourself, the things you expect of yourself, and are they reasonable? And are they equal to what you would expect from other people? So if someone screws up and apologizes and you're like, you know what, it's fine, don't worry about it, it's all good, water under the bridge. I won't feel any differently about you. You're human. But if I screw up, it's like you suck. You're a horrible person. You're bad at your job. You're probably going to get fired. Like, what expectations do you set for yourself? Or do you have any? I've tried to jettison all of my expectations for myself and just live in the now and go with the flow. That doesn't really work.
It's a good attempt.
So
It
I'd be
is.
curious to know what you guys think of this. I literally had a person tell me that it was arrogant of me to have higher expectations of myself than of my expectations of others. They told me I was arrogant for having higher expectations of myself than I had for others. And I've thought about it. It was many years ago, but I've thought about it on and off over the years. And I still have never come to the conclusion that I either disagree or agree with that.
I disagree with it. I don't believe you have an arrogant bone in your body.
Well, I appreciate that, Kyle. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
And I just-
but
I'm not arrogant.
it might be accidental arrogance. Like it's close. It seems, yeah. It is that thing you're doing is arrogant, but you're not doing it out of arrogance.
I agree with the sentiment for sure that you should not place onto yourself higher expectations than you would place onto others.
Right.
I mean, and that's because you yourself know all of the variables, right? You know everything going on in your life. You know all of the things that are distracting you. You know all of those things. And maybe that's why you're like, well, I don't really have any distractions right now, so I should be able to do something better than this other person who I don't know anything about, but I'm putting imaginary distractions on them that's keeping them from doing the thing I've asked them to do.
But I think it was more to the thing that Kyle said early on, where I don't even know if it was a competitive kind of a thing, that I just didn't expect someone to do as well at the same thing or something. It was more what Kyle was talking about, where if that person messed up doing something, I was very forgiving. But if I messed up that self-talk that, went on inside my head it's similar to what Kyle talks about, right? Or was talking about, wow, I blew it. Like, I'm going to get fired. I started getting worried and all that stuff. And so, that's the hard one. Like, I don't know. I agree with you on Peter, that the way you were describing it. Yeah, that is 100% unfair. But I think people do it. I mean, most people I know have higher expectations of themselves than others around them.
So if you back your car into a post and versus, I don't know, say your youngest child backs the car into a post, who are you more upset with? You
Me.
or, yeah.
Yeah.
And, but honestly, it's the same thing, right? It's the exact same outcome.
But in that case, my expectation's higher because I've been driving for so much longer. I shouldn't be backing into posts. Like, I should be better at paying attention because I've had my license longer than they have.
Every accident I've been in has been the other driver's fault. And I'm like more worried about them. I'm like, are you okay? Like, they ran into me and I'm like, are you okay? And like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, hey, stuff happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, what I just did there is I rationalized my own higher expectations.
That's right. See?
Myself. I just rationalized it.
Yeah. And I understand. We certainly have higher expectations, or the expectations that we set for ourselves, we expect to meet every single time.
Right. Well, Chad, your point, right? Like, you don't expect everyone on your team to answer every text message and email whenever it comes through. You set that expectation. That's just who you are and what you do, but you certainly don't place that expectation on anyone else on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't place that on other people, but my own expectations of myself fluctuate a little bit depending on what we're talking about, right? Like, connectivity with the team, I set a really high bar, but like, there's no world where I'm going to be as talented at the actual task of software development as some of our younger developers, right? Like, their experience and their skill set and just their day-to-day ability, they're better. They're just better. And I've come to understand that, yes, I'm on the other side of the rainbow as far as your skill set peaks, and then it just kind of levels out, plateaus maybe. I don't think I'm conveying the point right, but like,
I
I'm
know
gonna be
you're selling
hyper-connected.
yourself short, but I
maybe
think
a
you're
little bit.
conveying that, like, you're not on that same learning trajectory. Like, theirs is much steeper because they're still back in that space where they're really hungry, and you're just in maintenance mode.
Well, yeah, I'm in maintenance mode and I'm in a different role now, right? Like, I don't think I've written a line of code all week. Well, no, that's not true. I wrote some yesterday, but it's but my expectation for that isn't as high as it used to be, right? Like, my
Right.
skill set expectation is, yes, I know a few things, but I'm probably not going to pick up Node if I don't have to. That's a lie. I'm going to pick it up. But like, some of these other concepts, I'm not going to deep dive into like I would have 20 years ago.
You are not going to solve every technical problem on your project.
Right.
Right.
No, like I can totally solve that. And I can totally solve that, and I can totally solve that, and I forget what that one thing is. I don't need this except for this one thing, and I don't need that except for this one other thing, and my teddy bear, my stuffed chair, all this, and then the people. It's a cartoon that I'm referencing from a long time ago. I don't remember what it is, probably Warner Brothers, but and now enough to let some of those things go, right? And not like have to be the one that solves that problem. You can let somebody else tackle it for a while. If they need help, you'll jump in, but
I'm going to be the one that describes the problem to, whatever degree it needs to be described at, and then start it, right? I'm probably not going to finish it, but
right.
that's not the role in my expectation. So personal expectations and personal goals for me are a little different than if I were in a different role on a project. And
But
I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily set mine any higher than what I expect from other folks. And I get what Claire's saying, like the arrogance with that, or did you say arrogance or?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
person who said it to me, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want my own expectations to be like so far out of line with everybody else's, and then have that affect their own goals to say, oh, that's that's unfair to a team, right? To have that be a thing, but
Yep.
I don't know.
I think the secret to happiness is like
reading a
low
motivational poster.
expectation. If you could have zero expectations of yourself, like, yeah. But you kind of have life expectations where you get to a point and you're like, well, I'm this far, but I should be, I thought I would be this by now. And that's always going to be a disappointment. Well, some people exceed their own expectations. And if you have low expectations, you do that all the time. And it's pure joy. So that's my parting thought. Any other parting thoughts before we call it for the day?
I think I'll go with Claire's and don't be arrogant with yourself. Just, expect the same out of yourself as you would others, and know that you're human.
Yeah, relax. That's
Yep.
my parting thought.
Yep, I would agree. There's a great blog I read, and one of the sentences in there is violated expectations are the root of disappointment, frustration, and broken relationships. And so low expectations is probably the way to go, or if you can't set them low, then at least be clear about what your expectations are with yourself and with others.
Keep it real.
Keep it real.
Peace out. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.